Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Tool is often used in group relations, workshops designed to help people understand how unconscious material, that is material from the dark area, unknown area, affects their effectiveness on the job. So, let us go back to the matrix. It is this closed area which really destroys relationship. Now, you can't go beyond that. You have to let people know. You see, again, sometimes I refer to my own biographical details, because I can say whatever I wish without anybody taking offense. When I was teaching in St. Stephen's College, we had a common staff room where we collected in between classes to have a cup of tea or just spend some time together. And I had a reputation of being to the point and brief and get on with the task approach. And then I sat there talking and joking about something which had happened about a staff dinner. And as I left with this very dear friend of mine, Sunil Chand, who was teaching English, he said, "You know, Vinay, there is something I would like to tell you." I said, if you can't, nobody can. And he said, "You know, it is this aspect of your persona which people may like to see more often." And that was a huge feedback. It was my closed area. People did not realize that there was another aspect to my personality. The relevance of that is to say, you may be ruining, damaging, hurting, working suboptimally, because there is something about you which people don't know and they ought to know. That is where you use this. This is used to help people understand how unconscious material, that is material from the dark area, unknown area, affects their effectiveness on the job. So, it is not just the dark area, but also the unknown area, whether it is blind or it is dark or closed, the attempt should be move all to the arena. MBTI, focus on personal styles of individual workers. Now, look, you give the same message to 3 people to deliver, they will deliver it in 3 different ways. We had a deputy director in this institute, and he and his wife were very kind to me, and I used to spend some of my leisure time or time when I was going through a cathartic experience talking to them. And we got along very well together. My wife and I were very fond of the couple. And one day I happened to visit them alone, and his wife said, "Okay, Dr. Gautam, now what is the first thing what you want to say? What is the second thing what you want to say? What is the third thing you want to say?" I said, "What is it?" She said, "Oh, it hasn't, the penny hasn't dropped, has it?" I said, "No, it didn't." So he said, "You know, whenever you talk, you say, I have to say 3 things. Or I have to say 4 things, first, second, third." So, I thought I will save you the exercise and tell you, okay, your first thing first. I said, "You are embarrassing me." So, she said, "Well, am I not older to you?" I said, "Of course, you are older to me." And then I said, "But you are prettier too." He said, doesn't work with me at all. The important thing is, now we can leave the rest of the conversation out. Personal styles affect conversation. Everything is a signature. The way you dress is a signature, the way you talk is a signature, the way you give an illustration is a signature. In fact, many people often tell me, "You did that draft, didn't you?" I said, "But I didn't sign it." He said, "You don't have to sign it. What you write is so clearly your style that nobody else would write that way." So, whenever I have to do a public draft which somebody else wants to sign, I have to make conscious effort to talk in the way that person talks. All these illustrations meant to prove to you a very simple point. You are your style. MBTI has tried to capture that. Its access to theory, behavior is affected by the way a person takes in process and reacts to the information available. You see, all of us at the end of the day are predictable creatures. People who know us know exactly what provokes us. People who know us know exactly what pleases us. And believe me, you don't even have to be a psychologist to do that. Those of us who have brought up little children know what wonderful psychologists kids of 4 or 5 or 6 make. When they want to ingratiate themselves, they smile. When the smile doesn't work, they cry. When the crying doesn't work, they yell. When the yelling doesn't work, they throw a tantrum. And when nothing works, they destroy. But your attention they will get. Now, they never went to a psychology MA class. You are born that way. Any major discipline is rooted in the natural instincts of man. Take it from me. And that which is not rooted in the natural instincts of man will not grow up into a discipline. MBTI rates individuals on 8 dimensions: extraversion and introversion. This has a source of energy. Later on this becomes extrovert or introvert. Collecting information, sensing, intuiting, decision making, thinking, feeling. Now, this is where there have been gender stereotypes created, and sometimes I feel quite erroneously. We will get into the male, female, mother, father syndrome when we come to transactional analysis. Please remember, as I told you once, what is labeled as male or what is labeled as female is not necessarily a physiological phenomena. These are captions, and by popular perceptions attributed to males or females. I have seen a lot of males with nothing else but a lot of female attributes. And I have seen a lot of females with nothing else but a lot of male attributes. Obviously, for the sake of the medium I am currently using, you do not expect me to name one, but if you think of it, you will be able to cite a lot of women which may be physiologically a woman, but really are quite masculine in their thought process, whatever, and vice versa. I have seen men break into tears just as often as women do. Therefore, what is the message I want to give you? What is the purpose of my saying it? Please break beyond gender stereotypes. Not because I am preaching gender equity, desirable as it may be. Gender stereotypes are all bunkum. There is no scientific basis to assuming that there are gender stereotypes. I much prefer to deal with them as labels of a lot of attributes. You put together a set of labels and you say these are female attributes. You could have called them just as well chair attributes, or you could have just as well called them sky attributes. It would have meant the same thing. It is like giving a name. Understanding the world, judging, perceiving. These are two different things. I received a mail today, as I often do during the day's course runs, about somebody who wants to set up a world-class institute. So, he must get my opinion. The trouble is there are so many world-class institutions being set up every day, I find it totally difficult to keep pace with them. So, I have created a 10-point item. Are there enough teachers for the world-class schools which are being set up? And I have now got into the habit of just copying and pasting them as a reply. And I said, at my point of time in life and being the fudgy-dudgy I am, and since you are so enthusiastic and since I am so impressed by your proposal, I can't ignore it, but all the same I want you to spend some time looking at the fundamental issues, sugar-coating it the best I can, and I gave those 10 issues. And I have sent that letter off to 2 people today. ultimately, let me tell you, a world class institution is made as much by its students as by its faculty. And you can't have a world class institutions with people running around for nothing more than placement. That is not the description of a world class institution. How many faculty are capable of earning a PhD by making a contribution to knowledge? What is a PhD about? I am not suggesting any answers, but the question has to be asked. How long do you evade this question? So, judging, that is judging. Perceiving, that is the way you understand it. Then MBTI styles according to managerial styles according to MDPI, and here you have the works. Go to an MBTI workshop, they will be happy to receive your money, and you will learn to use something which everyone else is using. For our purposes, all I want you to know is this is a study in styles. The trouble is you can't use it where you want to use it most. Administer a questionnaire to your boss to understand his style. The farthest you will ever get is giving it to one of your subordinates. It is pointless studying his style because he will be falling in place anyhow. Anyway, if I did not tell you about MDI, you would feel cheated. What are the again, like I did for Johari window. Applications of MBTI can be used for determining the fitness of a person for a particular job. They keep talking of it, they claim they do it, I have never seen it happen. Now, this is not condemning MBTI, maybe you have seen the wrong examples. So, I do not want you any one of you writing back to me that I tried MBTI for recruitment purposes and it worked marvelously. Of course, you are right. My answer is you are right even before you write to me. Like everyone else, I am a growing person. Remember what I said, I have not seen it being used. Now, I can't be more careful than that. But then MBTI is good consulting assignment like ERP, huge money there. Everyone is an ERP consult. I am sure all of you know what is ERP. In case you do not find out, go through a Google search to find out what is ERP. We are the only country which still practices ERP after the person who founded ERP said it does not work. But we are still consulting and creating organizations over ERP. I do not want to get into a discussion all this because these are intervention strategies, and believe me, like anything else, popular perceptions determines the efficacy of an intervention. Yoga was there even before Ramdev Baba came. Look at what he has done. He transformed it. I mean, they are all rushing now to Haridwar. And mind you, there were patches even before Swami Ramadev or Baba Ramadev or however you call him. 20 years, 30 years ago, Yogi Brahmachari used to be on the television just as frequently as the present one, and he used to have an accompaniment on the television, some dolly who used to ask him questions and he used to respond, and yoga again became very popular. What I am saying is even a truth needs good projection to become a fashion. And there is good marketing. Now, if business is all about business, well, then I can't teach you intervention strategies without cautioning you that it may be just backed up by a lot of promotional campaign. Not that there is anything wrong with a promotional campaign, but the promotional campaign is all that can give a reputation or otherwise to an intervention. You have people going around now asking for, are you an MBTI specialist? And the answer should always be yes, because then you can always read it. It's like going to a surgery, and when you enter the operation theatre, you haven't ever opened an intestine to take out an appendix. You can always be reading the book there while you are cutting something which you think is the appendix. How do you think operations get botched up? Happens all the time in intervention strategies. Holland 1985 proposed a personality job fit theory which makes a case for job specific personality types. Now, occupational groups, preferred mode, personality types. If you are looking for mechanics and operators, Preferred mode is physical, requiring strength. Personality type realistic. Now, I can't understand. So, I asked this question to a CEO who had claimed that he was using MBTI to recruit people. I said, why can't you recruit a personality type like a poet to be a mechanic? So, he laughed and he laughed and he laughed. So, I asked him what was so funny about it. And mind you, if just in case you thought it was a Desi organization, no, this was not a Desi organization. This was a multinational organization with its Indian subsidiary, therefore very, very classy. So, I said, what's tickling you? He said, sir, you want a poet as a mechanic? I said, that is ideal, at least he would not be bored on the job. He said, for the life of me, I would not recruit him. So, I said, yeah. So, he said, yeah. So, I said, what do you think I am? He said, you are a great realist, sir. You would make a great mechanic. So, I said, but would you recruit me? He said, no, I won't recruit you. So, I asked him why. He said, because you would stand there analyzing the motions which would never work, because you are supposed to be mechanical there. So, we went on like this, and then finally, I said, okay, you called me a realist, listen to some of the poems which I wrote 20 years ago. He said, you didn't write it. I said, I plagiarized it. He said, you didn't publish it then. I said, I didn't. He said, just because you plagiarized it? I said, God damn it, I wrote them. He says, I don't believe it. He says, it doesn't sound like you at all. I said, this is where your MBTI, where does it go? In other words, now let us convert all these remarks into a serious management proposition. These intervention strategies give you a truth, but it can be a limited truth. Now, that is the point I am trying to make. You know how I explain things. First the fundamentals, then I give it an applicational veneer, then I put it in everyday language, then I convert it into a distilled managerial version, so that your takeaways are clear, you know what I am talking about, otherwise you may get lost in the woods of my illustration. With that, I will move from the application of MBTI to transactional analysis, something very popular. Eric Burns, what have you, games people play, you are okay, I am okay, and everyone considers himself a transactional analyst even without knowing the spelling, because it is properly known as TA, not travel allowance, but transactional analysis. I was talking to a group of people talking about IT and how familiar perspectives to IT. And then somebody said, sir, I thought you never got into an income tax department. I said, oh, that is what you thought? I was talking of information technology. So, please understand, all acronyms have their favorite domains. So, all TAs are not TAs, traveling allowances, a lot of TAs are transactional analysis. All ITs are not information technology, it is income tax to a lot of people. So, please avoid using acronyms, it does not work. There are 4 kinds of analysis, because it is used to change the organization culture by increasing people's awareness of their interpersonal interactions. There are 4 kinds of analysis: structural analysis, transactional analysis, game analysis, script analysis, and I can add more to it. Now, let us begin at the bottom, script analysis. Why do so many girls talk like their mothers? Why do so many children talk like their parents? That is the script which they have been given. That is how they have seen their parents react. So, that is the script handed down. Now, you can get over it, provided you are conscious that this script is handed down to you. You are speaking that kind of language because that is the language you grew up with. Then, of course, there is the game analysis. Everyone is believing he is smarter, he is cleverer, we have discussed all that. I did not discuss that all over again. Let me quickly talk a little bit about structural analysis and transactional analysis. Transactional analysis believes that there are 3 ego states: parent, adult, child. Now, you do not have to be a parent to have the parent ego state. Remember what I was saying, these are labels. Parent ego state has certain characteristics. You can have a child with a parent ego state, a physical child. You can have an adult with a child ego state. So, these are ego states: parent, adult, child, and that transaction alone succeeds which is complementary. A parent ego state wants a child ego state. A child ego state wants a parent ego state, but it does not work for the adult. The adult only wants an adult to adult interaction. Now, that is all you need about transactional analysis. In case any one of you specialize in organization management, then all this will come back to you in a course on organization development. Then there are ulterior transactions. You know, you are sitting with your wife in your room and your brother enters. So, what do you say? Go away, we want privacy. Or you say, आओ, बैठो, come, sit. No, you are not saying come and sit, you are saying go, shoot. It is an ulterior transaction. You mean one thing, you say another, because there is a social protocol. Then there are psychological positions in an organization. I am okay, you are okay, this is ideal. But most people do not belong here. You know, it is again like the Johari window. I am okay, you are not okay. Now, why don't you learn? Why don't you become a little more like me? Because I am the best. Or better still, I am not okay, you are the boss, then you teach me, sir. Tvameva mata chapita tvameva translated into what is transactional, and I say, sir, you are my father and mother. Now, that is not what Krishna meant at all, but I have seen people actually say that. And this person was telling his boss, sir, you are my father and mother. So, the boss was very level headed. He said, tell me, how can I be both to you? To which he said, sir, but Sri Krishna said it in Gita. Tvameva mata chapita tvameva. So, he said, but he did not want it applied here, did he? He said, no, sir. I have been told that Krishna was the greatest management thinker ever. So, if he said it, it must be true. So, this boss just beat his forehead. He said, Dr. Gautam, what do I do with this guy? He knows no Sanskrit, he knows no Krishna, he knows no management. He insists on getting up to my right side. Sir, I am not okay, you are okay. Now, that is the best example I am thinking of when I say, I am not okay, you are okay, because you are my father and mother. You, sir, please help me, sir. You find that type. Then, I am not okay, you are not okay. You see, I have had 3 pegs, you have had 4 pegs, both of us are now terrible. So, clearly this does not make for a happy work relationship. Neither these two. What you have to get to is, you have to respect yourself and respect others. Do not go misinterpreting Gita. Do not go cowering when you shouldn't. Do not become dominant when you shouldn't, and above all, do not become crooked when you shouldn't. I have already explained to you script analysis. Let us get to grid organization development. System OD intervention focuses on dimensions of managerial effectiveness, uses a variety of specially designed diagnostic instruments that enable individuals and groups to study their own behavior and identify areas that need improvement. Now, if you read these 2 sentences carefully, they, to my mind, really do not need an explanation, because what it is saying is to enable individuals and groups to study their own behavior and identify areas that need improvement. And this again will go back to a grid, and I want you to understand that grid properly. This is the grid. Now, do not ask me why it has 9 points. I happened to discuss this with both Robert Blake and Jane Mouton when they were visiting Delhi in a conference I was hosting, and I said, why did you stop at 9? So, Robert looked at Jane and Jane looked at Robert, and they asked each other, why did we put it at 9? So, Robert said, sir, I do not really remember. So, Jane said, I will tell you why, because we conducted this study on a group of pilots, and we could find only 9 categories. So, we generalized it to everyone. So, the both of them turned around to me and said, but Dr. Gautam, it sells very well. I said, I know you have got it. PR grid traders in India, and they claim for the first time in India. So, they smiled at each other, beaming, because the trainee which they had trained was standing right next to me. We will save all the names for the discussion here. It has worked very well. Now, of course, they are no longer around, but what they had said is, you have got concern for people and concern for results, and I have already guarded myself against you writing in a question and saying, why 9? Don't ask that question, there are no answers. It is just settled at 9. It is just like the year you were born. Why were you born in the year you were born? You don't have an answer, and I don't have an answer. Even Robert Blake and Jane Mothers didn't have an answer. They put it at 9, and their contribution was, they talked of concern for results, concern for people. They put low on the left hand side and at the bottom, and they put high on the right hand side and the top, and there you can see that they had created a number of blocks. You could have 0 concern for people and 0 concern for results. You could have 9 units of concern for people and 9 units of concern for results. On the other hand, you could have high concern for people and low concern for results. And then he went around to give a name against all this. If you have low concern for people and low concern for results, you are an impoverished manager. If you have high concern for people and no concern for results, you are running a club, you are not running a workplace. If you have high concern for results and no concern for people, you are a task-oriented manager. And if you have, of course, high concern for results and high concern for people, you are a team manager, which is what most managers fancy themselves to be. Remember, mirrors are always the perfect feedback. You are the best. In the morning, when you go to the mirror with your comb, and whether you are balding or graying, whether you have luxurious hair or no hair, you keep running the comb through your hair over and over again and looking closely at the mirror till finally the mirror says, shoo, go, you are okay. And then you say, am I okay? Yeah, I am okay. So, I am looking handsome, though nobody else thinks you are handsome, but the mirror does, which is why the expression has grown up, mirror, mirror, who is the prettiest of them all? And the mirror says you, because you won't leave the mirror till the mirror says yes. This is the story of a team manager. Everyone believes he is a team manager. Incidentally, the most dominant species I have met in organizations is of managers who are democratically oriented. They all begin their conversation, Dr. Gautam, you know me. And like being what I am, I tell them, no, frankly, I don't know you. They usually don't hear that statement. You know, I'm very democratic by character. I said, I know, you just throw files at people. What did you say? I said nothing. And they continue because they don't hear anything which they don't want to hear. Everyone is a democratic manager. You know, I respect people. I just throw them out of my room. I just respect them so much. I don't even let them walk out of my room. There is a huge world of difference between reality and perception. Not that perceptions about you are always right, but then your self-image may not be always right. Ultimately, you have to get to a sound reality perception, which is what I told you right at the beginning. Grid organization development has phases. You first have a grid seminar, then you have a teamwork development, then you have an intergroup development, then you design ideal strategic model, then you implement the ideal strategic model, and then you finally have systematic critique. You have read this, you have seen this, you have heard me read it out to you. Don't ask me what the details of the inputs for each one of them are, because I am not making grid consultants out of you. I just want you to know that it passes through the following stages, because I have several other interventions to cover within the very limited time you have found for this program. Then there are group interventions. The group interventions are really third party interventions. When two groups are engaged in a conflict and a third party steps in to facilitate a positive discussion. This will never happen till the third party has some locus of control. Why should you listen to a third party? My own feeling is that you will have to walk through all these interventions, be it Johari window, be it MBTI, be it transactional analysis, be it grade, or be it third party interventions, in a mode which are mutually complementary. There is no patented solution of an intervention strategy, it does not work. In fact, if you have a group of people you are dealing with, different groups will respond to different interventions. So, ultimately you will have to create subgroups. There will be some who will be facilitated with transactional analysis. There will be some who would work with grid development. The trouble with all these intervention strategies is there is no tool developed yet which is an integrative mechanism of the different tools. And when I raised this question with one of the most successful OD consultants, he said, "Doc, that is the role of the consultant himself, he has to integrate it. Otherwise, everyone will buy a toolkit and start practicing it." The difference between a successful consultant and an unsuccessful consultant, and he knows which intervention to practice when, which intervention to combine with which other intervention, and how do you create the seamlessness between the two or amongst the three, depending upon how many you choose. How do you take it forward, and then how do you rephrase it? So, understand how it goes. It is unfreezing, or even before unfreezing, from symptoms to the cause. We have discussed that. From the symptoms to the cause. When you understand the cause, then you unfreeze it. You unfreeze the situation. When you unfreeze it, then you structure it. After you have structured it, you generate the options. After generating the options, you evaluate the options. After evaluating the options, you select the preferred option, and then you refreeze it. That is the way the cycle goes. And for the next cycle, again you go back to unfreezing it. So, from unfreezing to refreezing, in between there is a scientific process, and at each one of the scientific processes, there is an intervention technique from which you have to choose. And it is the consultant's role profile. It is the consultant's job to complete this cycle. So, to practice intervention strategies, it is not just enough to know the toolbox. It is always important as a precursor activity to be capable of diagnosis, and as a follow-up activity of stabilizing the change. So, diagnostic skills helps you to get into the system. Stabilizing the change makes you work the system again. The third party interventions, you heard me say, in my limited experience of trying them out and talking to people who have tried them out, work only if the third party has the moral or the position power to ensure it works. The three basic components of a third party intervention are confrontation. Here, what are you both up to? Come here. Sit down. That's confrontation. Where you know the other two will respond because you are the authority, then you can link it up with transactional analysis. It is the parent ego state. Asking two people with child ego state to come and listen. You can't beam it at a person with an adult ego stage, because the adult ego stage may turn around and say, excuse me sir, what is it to you? And you may turn around to say that I am the boss, therefore I am entitled to it. And he may turn around and say, you may be the boss, which I am happy to acknowledge, but this is a personal matter. She stole my cookies, sir. What has that to do with the organization? Oh, is that right? Yes, sir, and none of your business. So, you see how different techniques have to be put together to work, even for a third party intervention. If you are getting the ego state wrong, you may have just the backfire which you would like to face. So, do not oversimplify these interventions, and do not misconstrue or interpret a statement which I am making when I say that to implement third party interventions you must have the necessary authority, be it referent or position power. It does not mean that authority is enough. It is a necessary condition, it is not a sufficient condition. And people who wish to understand management should certainly be familiar with the difference between what is a necessary condition and what is a sufficient condition. Then there is the question of a diagnosis, substantive and emotional issues. People facing divorce, people facing resignation, people facing sacking, people facing retrenchment, people facing transfer, all sorts of personal and professional issues. They happen all the time. Now, well might you ask, why are you bringing divorce into it? Oh, very much so, because people carry their outside work problems onto work problems. And you may need a third party intervention just to adjust your working hours, to be able to get back home when your spouse is not throwing things at you. Remember, workplace is a great citadel of safety. You need fear no assault there, at least by your spouse. You may fear assault by somebody else, but not by your spouse. The chances are, if you deserve it, you will get it anywhere, but that is another set of issues. At a more serious level, all that I am trying to say is, you can have a third party intervention arising out of diagnosis, who will not say, hey, both of you come here, sit down, I want to talk to you. No, that is confrontation. Diagnosis may be, do you think we can sit and talk about this? Because the way both of you are going about each other, it is disrupting everybody else's work, and I do not think we are willing to put up with that. Then both of them can turn around and say, well, prove it. Then you will have to show how interpersonal relations, if they have gone sour, are affecting performance. So, that is where diagnosis comes in. Then resolution, identify the commonalities. Now, what do you do when you identify the commonalities? Look, both of you are from St. Columbus, both of you are from St. Stephen's, both of you have gone to Cambridge. Ah, really? So, you show that both of you have the same pedigree. Do not turn around and say both of you have the same father, and you may get into a lot of trouble on account of that. Establishing commonality is always a good point to begin with. Now, at a serious level, it helps you to evoke values. It helps you to appeal to the noble and put people together. So, there is a cyclical model of interpersonal conflict: issues, triggering events, behavior, consequences, issues, triggering events, behavior, consequences, and so it goes on. When does a couple stop quarreling? When they have run out of energy. Then you can both go and have your grape juice fermented or otherwise, and after you have regained your energy, now let us get back to it. A lot of things are very cyclical. So, a lot of resolutions are attempted by managers merely by exhausting the parties. The trouble, however, is that option may not be a very economical option. Your losses of the conflict may be far too high. Now, I do not take credit for this graph. It is Mr. Walton, who in 1987 drew this graph, and I faintly suspect that he had gone to some electrical engineering classes, because he knew fluctuations, and he could understand what is the dissonance in a system and how to stabilize it. Those of you who are electrical engineers would understand it. Those of you who are not electrical engineers, do not worry about it. Even the electrical engineers do not understand it. So far as human relations are concerned. Now, of course, another matrix. So, you are having enough for your takeaway today in terms of specificity and in terms of understanding elements of cycle of conflict and objectives of conflict dialogue. Elements of conflict, what are the issues? How the diagnostic objectives, the action objectives. We shall get back to this after a while.